G'day poker people. Today I am showing you exactly how I win when I play 2-5. Because we are covering every single hand I played at a 2-5 session at Derby Lane, including all of the pre-flop folds, all of the big bluffs, all of the premium hands, we're going over it all today. So make sure you stick around to the end to get a full perspective on what it really takes to win at 2-5. We have over 190 hands to get to, so let's get to gambling and let's go. We are in the 2-5 mix straight away for 2,000 bangers, where this first hand happens when someone raises it up to 15, they get a cold caller, then the small blind to my direct right, it goes ahead and 3-bets to 75. Boy, this will be a good spot to wake up with a premium, and then I peel 9-8 offsuit. We're showing every hand today, so we have a pretty easy fold with this one. On to the next hand, which is actually a double board bomb pot. I end up peeling at 7-4 suited, but I have a pretty easy check fold when I'm with both boards, and in the next hand I am the small blind and the action actually folds around to me. I ask the big blind if he wants to chop and he does agree. I always chop when it folds around to the blinds, just easier to get on with the game and not pay a shit ton of rake to the house. The action folds around to my button and then I peel Jack 10 of clubs. Beautiful hand here. I raise it up to 20. I do differ my raise sizes pre-flop depending on how my opponents play, but without any reads here I'm just going to do 20 as a default. I make it 20 and then I get called by an unknown big blind. So it heads up to a flop of ace 10-3 with 2 hearts. When the villain checks it over to me, I'm going to want to bet a more polarized range on the ace high board, particularly when the big blind's going to call pre-flop with a bunch of offsuit ace-x combinations. So a middle strength hand like this probably not strong enough to bet. So I check it, we get a free turn, which is the 7 of hearts completing the front door flush. When the villain checks it over to me, not totally impossible that they have checked an ace twice, particularly when the front door flush got in. Having said that though, if they do have a pair that's worse than ours, I think they'll call at least one bet, and they can have a bunch of hands like king queen and king jack, queen jack with a big heart that's going to call as well. So I decide to bet it. I make it 25 bangers, and then the villain throws in the call, so liking that we're getting some value here. And when the river's the 6 of diamonds and the villain checks it over to me again, I think we've run out of thin value. I check it back, the villain shows king queen with the king of hearts, so we fade a bunch of outs and end up scooping this pot with jack 10. Let's go. We've got a double board bomb pot yet again, but when we completely whiff with 7-3 offsuit, we have a pretty easy fold here. Next, we've got 10-9 offsuit in the cutoff, and when the low jack open limbs, pretty easy fold with this trash hand. Next up is 69. Love a good meme with this hand, but it's definitely not strong enough to open from the hijack. I fold it. Next, we've got 10-9 offsuit again in worse position, and it's another limp, so if we fold it in the cutoff, we're definitely folding it in the low jack. We're in +1 with queen jack of spades. Definitely a hand strong enough to play this time. I stick with my default and raise it up to 20, and then we only get called by an unknown player in the small blind. So it heads up to a flop of queen 9-3 with 2 hearts. Love hidden top pair here. When the villain checks it over to me, definitely want to start building a pot here. I think they're likely to call us pretty wide, at least on a wet flop like this. So I decide to make it 20 bangers, and then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a turn, which is the ace of diamonds putting out backdoor diamonds. When the villain checks it over to me, I really don't like this turn card. I think the villain's going to float on the flop with pretty much all of the ace-x combinations in their range, particularly if they have a heart, but like ace 10 offsuit, ace jack offsuit, ace queen offsuit. So it's a bit thin to bet here in my opinion. A lot of their worst pairs might be scared off too. So I check it back and take a free river, and boy am I glad we do, because we hit the queen of clubs on the river. Let's bloody go. You love to see it. When the villain checks it over to me, I still think it's pretty likely that they have a bunch of those ace-x combinations in their range. So I think this is a great spot to go ahead and bomb it with an overbet for value. So I make it 100 bangers, and then the small blind folds pretty quickly. So probably on the weaker side of their range, but sometimes you're going to go ahead and overbet massive for value and your opponent just doesn't have a strong hand. That doesn't mean it's a negative EV play though. You just got to expect to get more folds. Next up, we fold 7-4 under the gun, 10-6 in the big blind, and it's king deuce offsuit in the small blind before the action's on my button, and it folds around to me with queen 7 offsuit. Now, I decided that this game is playing a little bit tighter. There has been a few walks and most pots are going heads up. So when that's the case, I just want to attack the blinds really aggressively, particularly when we don't have to pay rake pre-flop. So I'm just going to open any 2 cards here, and queen 7 offsuit is any 2 cards. I raise it up to 20 bangers, and then both the blinds fold. You love when a plan comes together. Then we fold 10 deuce offsuit in the cutoff and 5-2 suited. Next hand I'm in the low jack with 5-4 of clubs, and the +1 player raises it up to 20. It's about the third time he's V-pips with a raise pre-flop, so I definitely want to look for a spot to 3-bet this guy really aggressively. I just think 5-4 suited is just too weak, but definitely looking for a good spot for it going forward. As you can see there, a little bit of a card dead stretch for the next few hands before I'm in the cutoff with King 5 of hearts. Definitely a hand worth opening up from late position, particularly if the game is playing a little bit tighter. So I make it 20, and it works. We end up stealing the blinds here. In the next hand, our aggressive mate in the low jack raises to 20, and then I peel Queen 10 offsuit, and we are still looking for a spot to 3-bet this guy really aggressively. I just think Queen 10 offsuit is just a little bit too shitty quality of a hand, and we're just going to stay patient and wait for a better spot and a stronger hand to use. Next hand is a double board bomb pot, and we have ace 10 of diamonds, which actually flops 2 pair on the first board. So when the action checks me, you want to put in a big bet here with our strong hand. I make it 60 bangers, and then the cutoff rips it all in for 300. When the action folds back to me, I'm going nowhere, almost for certain. We have the first board locked up, so do not want to fold out my equity. I throw in that call, and then the villain has Queen 6, which is 2 pair on the second board, and unsurprisingly, we do end up chopping this bomb pot. Next hand, we peel the Robbie, the Jack 4 offsuit, and end up folding it. As much as I love the meme, don't want to donate money in the game. Then next hand, our mate raises to 20 yet again. Then we peel Queen 8 of diamonds. This is probably closer to being a 3-bet than the Queen 10 offsuit was, but still just a little bit too weak in my opinion. We are under the gun with pocket 10s. I go ahead and make it 20 bangers to go. Then the action folds round, so we collect the blinds. Next hand is my turn to be in the big blind with a 7-4 of clubs. When 2 early position players limp, I just check it, take that free flop, which is Queen 9-4 with 2 hearts. I check it over inflow to the other players, see what they go ahead and do. Under the gun checks, and then the +1 player goes ahead and bets 10. And I think if the +1 player did have a big hand on this board, he probably would have used a larger bet size. So I think he is definitely going to fold to a check raise if I go pretty big here. So I decide to pounce on that weakness. Also unlikely the under the gun player has a strong hand when he checked it. So I go ahead and make it 60 bangers, and then the under the gun player actually calls the 60. The +1 player thinks a little bit before folding. Now when the under the gun player limp calls a check raise, and he kind of did it without any hesitation, like it was no big deal. I think it's very, very likely they do have a flush draw. I think if they checked a monster, they would have at least considered 3-betting. So with that in mind, I think we probably do have the best hand with our bottom pair here. So when the turn's a jack of clubs, I want to keep betting for value because I think the flush draws are not folding. So I make it 75 bangers, 4 straight value with bottom pair. Then the under the gun player like snap calls. So yep, we very likely we do have the best hand still, but obviously there's a little bit of concern. I mean, maybe they have like ace jack of hearts. So when the river is the 6 of hearts, yep, we're dead here. Almost for certain the villain does have a flush. So I check it over to them. They go ahead and rip it all in for about 150. Easiest snap fold in the world for us. And then the villain does show ace 10 of hearts. So what a dialed in read by us, and we got maximum value and got away from it when we were behind. Let's go. When our aggressive mate opens 25 over a limp on the button, we have a pretty easy fold with 5-2 offsuit in the small blind, still waiting patiently for a good spot to 3-bet them. And in this next hand, early position raises to 15, middle position cold calls, and when the action folds to my button, I'm going to want to play 3-bet or fold here. If it's good enough to call, it's good enough to raise is my motto. I want to save the cold calls for games that are playing more loose and passive. So when I peel King Jack offsuit, I think this hand's good enough to V-pip and 3-bet, so I go ahead and make it 70 bangers, and then both the other players fold, so we get it through. Pretty happy to see. For the next few hands, we wake up with some absolute trash and end up folding all the way till we're in the big blind when middle position player opens, another middle position player calls, and I'm in the big blind with Jack 8 of clubs. Because they only made it 15 pre-flop, I think we want to have a calling range here, closing the action, and Jack 8 suited, probably just strong enough to be in it. Would not hate folding here, but whatever the case, I do throw in the call, and we have 3 ways to a flop of ace 10-9 with 2 diamonds, no clubs, but we do have the open-ended straight draw. Gonna check an inflow to the pre-flop aggressor who checks, as does the cold caller. So we get a free turn, which is the 10 of spades. Now, I really want to start bluffing at this board. I think it's very likely if either of the opponents had an ace or a 10, they would have just bet the flop themselves. So they're just going to have a bunch of natural folds on this board, and want to use a large size 2 to really try and represent a 10. I mean, if I actually had a 10 here, I'm not like betting 25, I'm betting big. So I go ahead and make it 50 bangers here, and then both the villains fold. Let's go. Next hand, we fold 10-9 in the small blind, then we fold 5-7 on the button. But in this next hand, our aggressive mate opens a hijack to 20, then I'm in the cutoff with King-7 of diamonds. I think this might be a good spot to finally go ahead and punish him for all the loose opens. In game, I folded, but if I had this playback, I think this was the spot we were patiently waiting for. Still though, plenty of the session to go. So we go on a little bit of a card dead stretch for the next few hands, definitely having our patience tested, and we are chomping at the bit to have the opportunity to raise our aggressive mate when we finally get it in this hand when he opens a cutoff to 20, and then I'm on the button with 10-7 of spades. Obviously not a standard hand to 3-bet, but against an aggressive guy who's been opening probably 40+% of hands, definitely want to punish him with an aggressive 3-bet and being in late position. I think we can use a middling strength hand like this one. So I 3-bet it up to 70 bangers, then the action folds back to him, and he actually decides to call, which is a little bit concerning, but we are heads up to a flop of Queen 8-5 rainbow with 1 spade. When he checks it over to me, definitely want to put in a C-bet. He's playing so many trash hands pre-flop, he's going to whiff on this board the majority of time. So I go ahead and make it 50, and then he throws in the call. So we do see a turn, which is a beautiful one. It is the 6 of spades, giving us a straight flush draw. You love to see that. When he checks it over to me, definitely want to keep bluffing, and I think I want to use a large size here. If my opponent does have any pair that's worse than a Queen X, I think he will fold to a large size. But even if he does call a bigger bet with a Queen X, we have decent equity to suck out on that hand, in which case we would like to play a larger pot. So I go ahead and make it 200 bangers here, but we don't need to mess around and see a river because he just folds then and there, and we finally punish him for playing every hand, and might not be the last time we do it this session. We fold some Uno cards in the cutoff, and in the next hand we peel 9-7 of spades and our aggressive mate opens to 20. I'm next to action. Typically I think this will be a good spot to 3-bet against this opponent type, but the fact that we just 3-bet him like 2 hands ago, I think he might start to sniff out that we're full of shit here. So I decide to stay disciplined and fold this one and wait for another spot. And in this next hand there's 2 open limps before I peel A7 of diamonds. I make it 30 bangers to go, and then a loose aggressive big blind calls the 30 before the under the gun player back raises to 130. The classic old limp back raise when our aggressive mate folds. I think we probably are up against pocket aces here, in all honesty. Maybe pocket kings or ace king, but we're just an absolute dog against that range, and even though we're getting a decent price to call, I decide to stay disciplined. I end up folding my hand, and then the hand stays interesting because the big blind calls, and their heads up to a flop which is King 10-8 with 2 diamonds, so he would have had the nut flush draw, but things would have been pretty tense for us when the big blind checks and the under the gun player goes ahead and bombs it for 300. So yep, still think they have aces or kings, and the big blind ends up folding his hand, but I'm kind of glad we fold pre-flop because we would have been pretty dicey spot on the flop against that hand in that range. Next hand, surprise surprise, our aggressive mate opens it to 20, and then I'm in the +1 position with pocket 4s. Now I know a lot of you people will probably hate what I'm about to do here, but I said in my head I'm definitely playing a 3-bet or fold strategy against this aggressive of an opponent, and I think in the early position pocket 4s are just too weak to 3-bet here. None of the players left behind are scared to cold call, and if we do just end up playing a bloated pot with pocket 4s out of position, it's just a shit situation. So I decide to stay disciplined. I stick to my 3-bet or fold strategy, and I fold my pocket 4s. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. Next 2 hands, we fold 6-3 offsuit and 10-5 suited before we play a fun one in the small blind. So a middle position player raises to 15. Our aggressive mate 3-bets the button to 40. I think when he hit 3-bets this small of a size, particularly with his aggressive table image, he just does not have a strong hand. So I'm actually going to want to 4-bet pretty aggressively here. So when I peel pocket 8s, this hand is definitely strong enough to 4-bet pre-flop. I think it's very likely we do have the best hand. Having said that though, I still want to use larger size, mostly for equity denial reasons, particularly so far out of position. So I buff it up to 175 bangers. The initial raiser folds pretty quickly. For the actions back on our aggressive mate, he's in the tank maybe like 15 seconds or so before finally deciding to lay it down. So very likely we did have the best hand. Regardless though, happy to take down this pot uncontested. Let's go. Next hand, there's an open limp before I'm on the button with King Queen offsuit. I buff it up to 30 bangers and then I get 2 different callers. So we're 3 ways to a flop of a 9-8-6 rainbow. When the action checks to me, I'm pretty much done with this hand on this board. I check it. So we get a free turn, which is the 5 of spades, putting out backdoor spades. And when the first player leads out for 30 and the second player raises to 140, I'm almost certain that they have a 7 there. And if we were done with the hand on the flop, we're definitely done on the turn. I fold and the small blind folds as well, so the limp is going to take down this pot and we move on to the next one. We end up peeling and folding some completely trash hands in the cutoff and hijack before I'm in the low jack with 6-4 of hearts. Definitely not a hand I would conventionally open here, but then I look over at both the hijack and the cutoff and they're pretty obviously telegraphing folds. So I decide to play my cutoff range here. I raise this one up to 20 and then I only get called by the small blind. So we are heads up to a flop of 3-6-6 with 2 clubs, baby. Let's go. We open the trash hand and flop trips. You love to see it. When the villain checks it over to me, definitely want to bet at this board. I go ahead and make it 15 bangers here, trying to keep my opponent in with basically any hand he's calling out of the cutoff. And what do you know? He ends up throwing in the call. So we're heads up to a turn, which is the 2 of diamonds. And then things get interesting when the small blind actually decides to lead out for 20. Now, I think when the opponent is leading out for this small of a size, they have a hand they're trying to freeze action with. Most likely some type of a draw, and most likely a flush draw, given that there's 2 out there. Not totally impossible they're doing this with like pocket ace to see where they're at either, but I think we definitely want to go ahead and raise here to try and get value from the flush draws. They are not leading out and folding when they have so many outs to improve on our hand, and we just need to charge them the maximum we possibly can. So I decide to raise it up to 125 bangers, and then the small blind thinks a few seconds before throwing in the call. So we love that we're getting action here. We just really hope both of the flush draws brick on the river, and then we get an absolutely gorgeous river, which is the ace of hearts. The villain checks it over to me. Now I think the opponent has a bunch of ace-x combinations in their range, probably all of the ace-x diamonds, all of the ace-x clubs hands in their range. So we just want to absolutely go ahead and bomb it for value to get called by one of those hands. And I choose my lucky number, 420 blaze it, hashtag meme, hashtag let's go. I make it 420. Then the villain folds pretty quickly. So again, we're using a large size for value and the opponent ends up folding, but I think it has more to do with them just being at the bottom of their range. And I still like these large bets when your opponent has strong hands. The next 2 hands, we end up folding some Uno cards before our aggressive mate is on the button and opens it to 15, and I peel ace-10 offsuit in the small blind. Of course, I'm 3-betting this hand against this villain. I make it 75 bangers to go, and then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a flop of jack-3 deuce with 2 clubs. Pretty big whiff for us. I check it over to the villain, see what they're going to go ahead and do, and then they go ahead and bet for 50, and I really hate folding to this small of a bet and against an aggressive opponent, but we just have such shit backdoors with this hand and just not great showdown value. I just end up folding this hand, staying disciplined. Hate to give up on it, but you got to play disciplined poker sometimes. Next hand, I'm forced to fold ace-9 offsuit on the button when middle position raises to 20. Then we go on a pretty extended card dead stretch, end up folding 9 hands in a row, including a double board bomb pot, but then our patience has paid off when we were in the cutoff with jack-9 offsuit. Let's go. We finally have a premium. Of course, I'm going to raise this one up. I go ahead and make it 20 bangers, and then everyone folds. So a little bit disappointing we don't get action with the jack-9. I actually end up showing my jack to the table, so they probably think I had some trash hand like a pocket jacks or something, but they don't know they got away from the monster here. So after taking it down with that absolute premium, we go on yet another extended card dead stretch, end up folding the next 10 hands pre-flop. Of course, I'm tracking all of this on the Fastroll Poker app. I'm using these real life hand histories to build up my database so I can objectively analyze the leaks in my game by looking over the data after the fact. If you want to try it for yourself and improve your own game, use the code LEEBETS and get the first month free on an annual subscription. But my patience is finally awarded in this next hand. When an under the gun player open limps, the +1 player raises to 25 and they get 2 different cold calls, including our aggressive mate in the small blind. And then I'm going to want to squeeze pretty aggressively here. I really only have to worry about the +1 player having a super strong hand hand when the other players just cold call. And when I peel ace jack offsuit, I think this hand is definitely strong enough to squeeze here, particularly since I might have a good table image after folding the previous 10 hands. So I make it 175 to go. The limper folds and the action's on the initial raiser, and he's in the tank a couple of seconds, and I'm just like, please fold, please fold, please fold, because he gives us action here, we're in trouble. And eventually he does fold, you love to see it. But then one of the cold callers actually decides to, surprise, surprise, call again off of a shorter stack, and then our aggressive mate folds. So it actually heads up to the flop, really hoping we hit because the opponent only has just over 320 behind. So really hoping that we can hit and then just stack them. And then the flop comes 6-4-3 with 2 clubs. So we don't hit here. Having said that though, with such a low SPR, I think we just want to go all in here. And I mean, most of the time when the opponent has a stronger hand, they're going to call. But even if we can deny equity to like king queen, we won't mind getting that here. So I just decide to rip it all in. Let's see all 5 cards or win it now. I rip it all in for about 320, and then the villain is in the tank about 30 seconds or so before eventually calling. Absolutely hate to see that. I end up showing my hand, and the villain shows pocket 9s. So yeah, we're probably losing this pot, but we have 6 outs to get there, and then the turn is the ace of spades. Let's go. We suck out in this over $1,000 pot. You love to see it. River is a 2 of diamonds, no help for our villain, and we end up dishing out the bag beat in the biggest pot we've played so far this session. You love to see it.
Oh, go lucky.
We end up folding a complete airball whiff in a double board bomb pot, and in the next hand we play, the button decides to straddle, and I'm in the cutoff, and I actually decide to double straddle here. Obviously not going to be the highest EV thing you can do in terms of winning chips. Having said that though, I do love giving action back in spots like this, particularly after I've won a big pot. You really don't want to go into a game and just like lock it up after winning a big stack. I think that's just really bad for your table image. It's really bad for the game in general. And you guys know I really care about things like keeping the game fun for recreational players, so I decided to take this opportunity to do that. I double straddle to 20, and then the button player open limps, and the action folds around to our aggressive mate, who actually decides to limp as well, and we are in the second straddle cutoff with ace queen offsuit. Oh my god, we pick up the premium in the double straddle. Of course I'm going to buff it up. I make it 145, and then only our aggressive mate calls. So it heads up to a flop of ace jack 4 with 2 clubs. They check it over to me. Definitely want to put in a C bet here, get called by worse ace X, flush draws, straight draws. So I make it 175 bangers, and then the villain folds pretty quickly, and we are raking in yet another big pot, and our patience is being rewarded. So we gave action while the getting was good, and we end up folding the next 4 Uno card hands pre-flop before there's a button straddle on and I'm first to act in the small blind. I'm going to want to raise a very strong range here, out of position to so many people, particularly when the button's going to get a price to play the plot in position pre-flop. So when I peel pocket 5s, I do not think this hand is strong enough, want to be raising a really tight range here, so I actually decide to fold my pocket 5s pre-flop. The folding continues, we continue with the card dead stretch, end up folding more Uno cards before we have a spot where the aggressive button opens to 20, and I'm in the small blind with king 9 offsuit. I think this is actually a really close spot whether we want to punish the villain with a 3-bet or not, but I'm just remembering back to the ace 10 offsuit hand when we had to check fold a lot, and that's going to be the inevitable truth if 3-betting out of the small blind too aggressively. So I decide to stay disciplined here, and I end up folding this hand, which is a play I'm pretty proud of. We're forced to fold our button after the cutoff raises, and in this next hand our aggressive mate actually decides to open limp the hijack, so I resolve that I'm going to raise any 2 cards in this spot. He does not have a strong hand. Let's attack it. And when I peel queen 5 offsuit, this is any 2 cards. I buff it up to 30 bangers, and then our plan goes awry when a tight aggressive button 3-bets to 100. So obviously I am not going to continue with this hand when the action folds round to me, and we get caught with our hand in the cookie jar. In the next hand, someone open limps, and I'm in the hijack with ace 2 of diamonds. Probably should be raising this hand, but I think I'm a bit shook after the last light raise got punished pretty awfully, so I end up folding it, as well as the next few hands, which are mostly Uno card stuff. We do get to play in this next hand though, when middle position player makes it 15, they get a cold caller, and I'm in the big blind with jack 8 of hearts. So for the second time this session, I'm cold calling with jack 8 out of the big blinds. So we're 3 ways to a flop of ace jack with 2 clubs and 1 heart. I check an inflow to the pre-flop aggressor. The action actually checks all the way through, so we get a free turn, which is the 10 of hearts. So let's go. We pick up a flush draw to go with our pair. Could go either way between betting or checking here, but I just think players really do like trapping with their trips on the flop, particularly on ace-high boards. So not totally secure that we do have the best hand, so I check it over to them, see what they go ahead and do. The action actually checks all the way through again, and we get a free river, which is the 3 of clubs, completing the front door flush draw. I think if either of the villains had a flush draw, they probably would have just bet themselves in a small pot. So I think we have the best hand, so I want to put in a cheeky little value bet here. I make it 25, and then both the villains fold. So probably no value to get in this one. Let's move on to the next hand. This next one might be a bit controversial. So we have pocket sevens in the small blind, but then a middle position player opens it to 25. Now I'd been paying attention, and this villain had previously been using a $20 open. So I actually think the larger open is probably indicative of some strength. And when they get one cold caller, I'm going to want to be playing a 3-bet or fold range out of the small blind for sure. And when I peel pocket sevens, it's just not quite strong enough to 3-bet for value here. Do not want to play this pot out of position, and I actually expect to get 4-bet pretty often. So I stick with my strategy, 3-bet or fold. I'm folding the pocket sevens. Might be controversial, but I think this is how you play good disciplined poker. And see, I'm not a 3-bet maniac. I actually do fold some strong hands pre-flop. Next hand, there's an open limb, but I'm on the button with 7-4 offsuit, and I ISO raise it to 30. Okay, maybe I'm a bit of a maniac. Whatever the case though, we do end up going heads up to a flop of Queen Jack Deuce with 2 hearts. Pretty wet board, so I want to go ahead and bet when the villain checks it over to me. I think if they have a super nutted hand, they're probably just going to check raise here. So I decide to make it 20 bangers to go, and then the villain calls. So it heads up to a turn, which is the Queen of Clubs. Kind of good, kind of bad. It's definitely going to be harder to fold out a pair now, but it's a lot less likely my villain has a strong pair. So when they check it over to me, definitely want to continue stabbing, but I also want to use a small size, something that I think a queen will definitely check raise on such a wet board, and then we just have the warning shot of where villain is in their range. So I go ahead and make it 30 here. Then the villain does check raise to 130. Almost for certain they have a queen here, so we have a pretty easy fold with 7 high, and maybe I'm earning that maniac status back here. So we end up folding 3 more trash hands pre-flop before waking up with the suited Robbie in the big blind, Jack 4 suited, facing 2 open limbs. I check it, take a free flop, which is 8-6 deuce, rainbow with 1 club. The action checks all the way through on the flop, and then the turn is the ace of clubs, giving us a flush draw. And I go ahead and stab here as a semi-bluff with my flush draw. Don't really love it on an ace-high board, since I think the villains are going to limp and check a lot of ace-high hands on the flop. But if we do get called here, we kind of just know where we're at. So I make it 15, and then I do get called by a hijack. So we are heads up to a river, which is the 10 of hearts. Pretty big whiff for us. I think the villain probably has a top pair, and I really just don't want to bluff into a strong range. So I check it, expecting to lose. The villain checks back, so maybe they have a worse draw of some sort. I show my jack high, and it was a bit optimistic, hoping this was good. The villain shows 6-4, so we actually call with the pair worse than ace-x on the turn, and yeah, maybe not the best spot to bluff. I end up folding some absolute peanuts in the small blind before I'm on the button with a 6-2 offsuit. I raise it up to 20 here. I think the cat's out of the bag at this point. I'm pretty much just raising any button in this game. I make it 20 here, and then an aggressive big blind calls. So it heads up to a flop, which is 6-3 deuce, baby, with 2 diamonds. Let's go. We flop 2 pair with the trash hand. When villain checks it over to me, I want to start building a pot here. I make it 15 bangers, and then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a turn, which is the ace of spades. When the villain checks it over to me, I want to use a large bet size here. I think the villain is going to float a lot on the flop with ace-x combinations, which are obviously not going to fold when they hit it on the turn. So I make it 60 here, and then the villain puts in the check raise to 175. And I'm already hating this spot. I think my villain is going to have a lot of slow plays on the flop that are definitely going to raise when the ace is on the turn, and they're going to put me on a lot of ace-x hands. Having said that though, cannot fold just yet. If I give my opponent credit for slow plays on the flop, not totally impossible that they just have 2-3 here. They could also have ace-x of diamonds. So we do beat a few things in their range, so I throw in the call, but we're going to proceed with a lot of caution going to the river. When the river is the 8 of diamonds and the villain checks it over to me, I am very happy to have a free showdown here, and not totally impossible where beat my opponent has a set or a straight that's scared about the front door flush. So I check it back, and then the villain shakes his head and says, "You're good." So he was actually airball bluffing there, and so we show our hand, they end up mucking, and we're very happy to rake in this decent sized pot for a 2-5 game. Let's go. So with a straddle on and an open limp, it's definitely tempting to raise ace-5 offsuit from the cutoff, but ultimately I decide to stay disciplined and fold it. And I fold some more trash hands going forward. No, you're seeing things. I didn't just fold Jack-9 to no action at all. I would never fold a monster hand like that. What are you talking about? That didn't just happen. Next hand, there's 2 open limps. I'm in the big blind with 7-4 offsuit. I check it, take a free flop, which is queen-4 deuce with 2 spades. Our aggressive mate checks it over to me, and I actually want to stab on this board, mostly just to deny equity, but we can get a little bit of thin value from draws. So I go ahead and make it 15, the initial limper folds, and our aggressive mate calls. So it heads up to a turn, which is the 8 of diamonds. When the villain checks it over to me, it is super thin, but I think we can get a little bit more thin value out of here. Obviously never going to fold out a queen or anything, but if they do have a draw, I don't think they're going to fold to a 25 bet here. So that's why I make it 25 bangers to go. Then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a river, which is the 9 of hearts, and we've definitely run out of value at this point. Obviously a flush draw isn't just going to randomly call, but we do beat most of their flush draws, so I check it back, and the villain shows queen 9. So there you go. Ended up going a bit too thin for value, at least results wise. We fold bad ace facing a raise on the button, and in the next hand there is 1 open limp, and the action folds to my cutoff with a Jack-10 offsuit. I ISO it up, I go ahead and make it 30 bangers, and then we get 2 different callers. So we're 3 ways to a flop of ace Jack-3 with 2 hearts. When the villain check it over to me, definitely want to check this one and take a free turn. If we bet here and we get called, we're probably just running into an ace X. So I check it, take the free turn, which is the 2 of diamonds, putting out backdoor diamonds. And when the action checks to me again here, I definitely just want to go ahead and start betting for value. I think it's very likely either of the opponents would have bet if they had an ace X combination. So I just want to try and get value from their draws at this point, maybe some worse pairs. So I make it 40 bangers, and then I only get called by the small blind. So it heads up to a river, which is the 9 of spades. When the villain checks it over to me, I don't think it's super likely that they have an ace when they just checked twice on the wet board, but I think betting for value would just be a little bit too thin here. I mean, they could just have a stronger jack, honestly. So I decide to check it back, and then the villain says, "You're good, I missed." So I show my hand and he ends up mucking, and we're raking in a nice little pot here for a 2-5 game. Next hand, we have a button straddle on, and when the action folds to my cutoff, I only have to get through 1 villain, so I want to raise very aggressively here. So when I peel a 9-5 suited, this hand's definitely strong enough. I make it 40 bangers, and then the button straddle folds, so we're taking down another one. I end up folding a bunch more banana peels before this next interesting hand where I'm in the big blind with a pocket jiggities, the JJ Abrams, a middle position player opens to 15. I 3-bet it up to 80 bangers, and then the villain folds, so we're taking down another one pre-flop. Next hand, I'm under the gun with pocket 3s. I decide to raise this one up to 20 bangers, and then the action folds through. So if we can keep winning hands like this pre-flop, who needs to even play post-flop poker? We fold some complete napkins in the small blind, and in this next hand, an aggressive low jack opens to 20. When the action folds to my button, this is the same villain who opened to 25 earlier, and I suspected he was doing that with a strong range. I think his 20 open size is a weaker range, so we definitely want to 3-bet pretty aggressively here, and I decide to start jacking off suit at the table. I 3-bet it up to a 70, and then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a flop of 8-6-4 rainbow. Not a great board for us, but when the villain checks it over to me, I want to start a C-bet. Maybe we can get a good run out to bluff them off of ace-high type hands. I make it 50 bangers here, and then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a turn, which is the 8 of diamonds. Definitely not a good turn for us. I think if we do continue to barrel here with too many bluffs, the villain is just going to think we're full of shit. Since it's we probably want to play our overpairs a bit more cautious here, and they can just call us down with a bunch of their pocket pairs in their range. So I check it back, we take a free river, which is the 10 of spades. The villain checks it over to me again, and now once we check the turn, I think our line is just completely not credible, and the villain will probably just like snap us off here with like even ace queen might, honestly. So I check it back, and then what do you know, the villain shows ace queen. Not sure if a bet on the river would have gotten through. Let me know what you think in the comments below. We end up folding some mandarin skin in the cutoff before we're in this next hand where the same loose aggressive villain opens under the gun to 20. And when the action folds to my hijack and I peel pocket 10s, absolute premium. I 3-bet it up to 70. Then the action's back to the under the gun player who puts in the 4-bet. He goes ahead and makes it 275. And I'm actually a little bit concerned we're behind here. If the villain has any of the hands stronger than ours, he's going to 4-bet them pure, of course. But being that we are 2.4k effective, we can't be going anywhere in position here. here. I throw in the call, and we're heads up to a flop of queen 5, 10 with 2 clubs, baby. We hit the set in a 4-bet pot. You love to see it. And things go from good to gooder when the under the gun player c-bets for 125. We are loving it, but we do have an interesting decision here whether we want to trap or we want to start raising now. The incentive to trap will be to keep villains, bluffs, and thinner value bets in. The incentive to raise would be to lower the SPR and hopefully stack aces and kings more often. I decide to do the latter here on the wet board. I raise it up to my lucky number, 420, blaze it bangers, and then the villain is in the tank a good 2 minutes or so. I'm really hoping he calls, but he seems like he has a really tough decision, and after the 2 minutes, he flashes the ace of hearts as he mucks. So a little bit disappointed to not get paid off here. The villain later makes a comment that insinuates he had ace queen here. I'm a little bit skeptical since he only showed the one card, but I guess we'll never know for sure. Still though, I can't complain. We're raking in a very healthy pot for a 2-5 game here. Let's go. We end up folding some more lumpy molds for the next 3 hands before I'm on the button yet again. This time I've got 8-4 offsuit. You guys have figured it out now. I'm raising any button here when it folds to me. I'll go ahead and make it 20 bangers, and then the aggressive big blind 3-bets me to 80. I definitely had that one coming, and it's time for me to fold another trash hand. We end up folding toenail clippings for the next 2 hands, including in a double board bomb pot for one of them. But then in this next hand, we have a hijack straddle on. The action folds to my aggressive mate in the big blind who open limps. And then I'm under the gun with king queen offsuit. Beautiful hand to see. I buff it up to 60 bangers. Then the player to my direct left goes ahead and 3-bets to 125 off of like a 250 stack. The action folds back to me and he says, "Go ahead, send me to the elevators." And I'm like, oh, holy shit, this guy just must have aces since he's trying to induce a call so hard. So I actually decide to fold my king queen here, and what do you know? The villain shows pocket aces, and nice try baiting me in, but I'm not falling for that one. This next hand actually is a really interesting one that illustrates why I'm playing a 3-bet or fold strategy pre-flop. So the action's on a passive player who just cold opens to 25, and then they get 2 different callers. Now I think the passive player opening to 25 just absolutely has a monster here for sure. So I'm going to want to 3-bet very, very tight. So when I peel 8-7 of hearts, this hand just isn't strong enough to 3-bet here. I also don't want to cold call here in this spot either, particularly with this hand. Like I would rather ace jack suited or something that can flush over flush people. This hand is just not it. It's just not a hand I want to take multi-way. So I do decide to fold. See guys, I'm not always a pure maniac. I base my decisions off of what the opponents are doing, what their ranges are. And you can see that point illustrated pretty well as we have a montage on the screen right now of me folding absolute garbage lining hands pre-flop. You know what's not garbage though? The anti-gambling club and the pro-gambling club. You can buy the merchandise now on leebets.com. New designs, really good fits, so cop that at leebets.com. We finally got a V-pip for you though. Our aggressive mate open limps the button, then we're in the small blind with ace-3 offsuit. We know this guy is nothing when he limps, so we buff it up, we make this one 30 bangers to go. Then the villain to our in the big blind calls, as does the original limper. It's definitely, the plan is not going well, so we go 3 ways to a flop of king jack 5 at rainbow. Big whiff for us. We are definitely checking out a position to 2 players. And then the big blind goes ahead and bets 25. The button calls. We have the easiest fold in the world here, in my opinion. I fold. Their heads up to a turn, which is 6 of clubs. The big blind continues betting for 50 and the button folds. In the next one, our aggressive mate opens a cutoff to 15. When I'm on the button with pocket 3s, we still want to punish this guy for the loose opens, so I 3-bet to 50. Then our old mate in the small blind says, "Send me to the elevator, fellas," as he 4-bets to 125. Cutoff gets out of the way, and I'm not going to give any more action with this hand. We are not deep enough to set mine, and I also think they have a premium. So I decide to fold my pocket 3s here. And then the villain was actually kind enough to show us he did have pocket 7s, so a bit looser than I thought, which is definitely going to be important information going forward. In fact, it might come into play in the next hand because the action folds to my cutoff with ace king of clubs. Let's go. I open this premium to 20, and then the villain says, "It's elevator time, guys," as he 3-bets to 60 when the action folds back to me. I was definitely concerned about the speech play previously, but now that he's shown pocket 7s, I know he's doing it with not a super wide range, but at least some wider stuff. So when he's only got about 400 in his stack, I rip it all in for 415. A little disappointed it's not exactly 420. Whatever the case though, he snap calls, I show my hand, and then he shows ace king offsuit. And of course we are going to run it once when we are almost for certain chopping, and we do end up chopping across the run out, so we end up splitting the blinds here. There isn't quite as much action for a while as I peel and fold a bunch of hands pre-flop that remind me of the individual package wrappers that Tide Pods come in. The card dead stretch is interrupted when we do peel Queen Jack offsuit, raise it up to 20, and steal the blinds. I'll take it, then we end up folding a bunch more before we do look down at Queen 10 suited, we raise it up to 20 bangers yet again, and we take down the blinds again. Things are definitely spiced up in this next hand though, when the elevator man rips it all in under the gun for about 200 bangers, then the action falls to our aggressive mate on the small blind who decides to re-raise it for 400. The actions on my big blind obviously going to be continuing very tight here, so when I peel Jack 2 offsuit, yeah, I'm not going to donate money to them. So I end up folding this hand. Under the gun player ended up having ace king and the small blind had ace 10 suited. Then the small blind hits the 10 on the flop and they end up scooping the elevator man, and now he finally gets to take that elevator ride that he's been asking for so long. Next hand, tight cutoff opens to 20. Our aggressive mate calls on the button. Then we peel pocket jacks in the small blind. I go ahead and 3-bet this one up to 110 bangers. And then both the villains fold. So we're taking down another one pre-flop. When someone raises pre-flop, we're forced to fold our button when it's a trash hand. It hurts, man, but gotta do it, gotta play well. But we get a bit of redemption in the next one when a passive player limps a low jack and I'm in the cutoff with a jack 8 offsuit. Probably one of the weaker hands I'll be ISO raising here, but still gonna go for it. I make it 30 and I get called by the button as well as the original limper. So we're 3 ways to a flop of a 7-4 deuce with 2 clubs. When the limper checks it over to me, not gonna bluff into 2 different people. I check, as does the button. So we're still 3 ways to a turn, which is the 8 of clubs giving us top pair. But then something interesting happens. Low jack actually decides to lead out for 60. And I think when a passive player chooses a really large size on this board, they actually have a really strong range, and it's probably stuff that's worried about seeing a 4th club on the river. So it could be a worse flush, could be 2 pair, it could just be an 8 with a better kicker. But against that range, an 8 with a jack, I just don't think is strong enough to put in the call, particularly with someone left to act. So I actually decide to make a disciplined fold here. The button folds as well. We don't get a reveal, but I think in the long run, this is a good fold to make. Let me know what you think in the comments. When someone limps and we've got Jack 10 in the hijack, I actually think it's just a good spot to make a disciplined fold. In the next hand, we get a bit of redemption. We're in +1 with ace 9 suited. I go ahead and raise that one up to 20 bangers, and we end up stealing the blinds here with it. You love to see that. We fold King 8 offsuit under the gun, and then we're in the big blind next hand, and we agree to chop with the small blind. And I'm not going to look at my cards and free roll tilt when I do agree to chop pre-flop. In this next one where I'm in the small blind, we see a player raise and then a tight aggressive player 3-bet them to 75. When the action folds back to my small blind, I peel ace 3 of hearts, and there are some villains I would consider 4-bet bluffing here with. And I think this is a decent hand to do it with, but against a tight aggressive player, I think their range is too strong that they're 3-betting, so I just decide to fold it. We're on the button in the next hand, and it folds to me this time, so I'm raising up 8-5 offsuit, hoping to take it down pre-flop, which is exactly what happens. 6-5 suited might be a premium, but the offsuit version goes straight in the market. And in this next hand, we have a button straddle on, and then a passive player open limps the big blind. When the action folds to my hijack and I see the cutoff pretty much telegraphing a fold, want to be raising very aggressively here, essentially trying to take it down pre-flop. So when I peel Queen 7 suited, this hand is definitely strong enough. I make it 55 bangers to go, and then both the villains fold. Let's go. We fold some dog hair shedding in the next 2 hands before the action folds to my button. You know I love playing the button, and even though we only have 10-3 offsuit, I'm in the mix. I make it 20 bangers, and then we get called by the big blind. So we're heads up to a flop of Jack 9 deuce with 2 diamonds. When the villain checks it over to me, we have some good backdoors with this hand, so I decide to c-bet bluff for 25, and then the villain folds. I'll take it. Let's go. We end up folding a bunch more cobweb looking hands before this next hand where there's a button straddle on, there's an open limper, and then a player raises it up to 30. Do not think they have a very strong range when they're raising so small over a limper. And then I peel Queen Jack offsuit. Definitely could go ahead and 3-bet this hand, but I think it might just be a little bit too loose with the offsuit version of this hand. I mean, if we get called, it's going to be by hands like Ace Queen and King Queen, and we're just in awful shape. I'd rather a worse hand, honestly, like 5-6 suited suited to 3-bet bluff with. So I decided to stay disciplined and fold this one. We're in the low jack with ace-9 of diamonds. I buff it up to 20 bangers, and then a new player who I don't recognize 3-bets next to act to 70. Then the action is on the cutoff, and they put in the 4-bet. They make it 225 bangers to go. Easiest fold in the world here with this hand. I think at least one of the villains probably has a premium. And I think the villain might have been the hijack because he puts in the 5-bet to 550. The 4-better gets out of the way, and yeah, what did we start here? We end up folding some more loose hair hands before we have this next hand that has a cutoff straddle on. So when I'm first to act on the button, I'm going to be raising a tighter range than I typically would from the button. King 3 suited, definitely still part of that range though. I go ahead and make it 30, and I only get called by the big blind. So it heads up to a flop of ace, queen, queen. When the villain checks it over to me, I think we have too much showdown value to want to bluff here. So I check it, and when the board runs out with pretty clean bricks on the turn and river, we end up just checking it down with the villain, and we actually end up chopping with a better king high. So pretty good run out for us, not gonna lie. In the next two hands, we peel and fold some more used toilet paper before we have a hand where there's two open limps, and then I'm in the big blind with king 9 of clubs. Wouldn't hate just going ahead and checking this hand and taking a free flop, but I think there's going to be a bit more EV in raising it up and trying to take it down here and now. So I make it 40 bangers to go, and then we do get one caller. So it heads up to a flop of 7, 6, 3 with 2 diamonds. Pretty big whiff for us. I check it over to the villain, see what they go ahead and do, and they do check back. So we get a free turn. I'm glad we do, because it's the king of spades. Let's go. We have a strong hand now. Now I actually think this is a really good spot to check to induce a bet. Because we do have a weaker kicker with our king, we can't just cooler the crap out of our opponent by betting ace king and king queen here. We need to play a bit more cautious and keep a wider range in and potentially induce bluffs. So I check it over to them. Then they take the bait. They go ahead and bet 55. We have a pretty easy call when we check to induce. I throw it in. So it heads up to a river, which is the 10 of hearts. Check it over to the opponent again in flow, and they check back and they show pocket 4s. So we're going to rake in this pot, and we probably made more money than we would have if we bet the turn. I fold jack 6 suited in the small blind, and then someone steals my button and I'm forced to fold queen 5 offsuit. Absolutely hate to see it, but got to get away from that one there. When the action folds to my cutoff and I've got ace 5 offsuit, I raise it up to 20 bangers and we take down the blinds. Next up, it's ace 2. Ace 5 worked for us. Let's see how ace 2 goes. I make it 20 bangers yet again. This time we get 3-bet by button to 70. When the action gets back to me, I really hate calling 3-bets out of position. And we have a decent hand to do it with, I suppose, but I think it's a better spot to just remain disciplined and not be giving a bunch of action when you're out of position. So I decide to fold here. So we end up peeling some hazardous waste for what would end up being the last extended card dead stretch for the session. I'm not going to lie, guys, editing a vlog with every single hand you've played in a session has been a massive effort. It's taken me about 4 times as long as it typically would for me to make this vlog. So if you do appreciate it, please let me know. Leave a comment below letting me know what you liked or where I could improve. And also hit that subscribe button. The only goal I have as a content creator is to make better and better vlogs every single time I put a video out. So please hit subscribe and you'll get those videos as they come out. Our card dead stretch ends when we peel 6-4 of spades in the hijack. I raise it up to 20 bangers, the cutoff calls, and then the button 3-bets to 100. And this hand actually performs pretty well against a 3-bet range, but being out of position, having to call a 5x, I would rather just play a 4-bet or fold range here. And I think this hand fits pretty solidly in the fold part of that range. So I fold, as does the cutoff. So our aggressive mate is at it again. He goes ahead and raises to 20 under the gun, and then I peel queen 9 of clubs in the +1 position, and we definitely have to punish him for the loose opens. A little bit dicey in early position, but I still want to go for it. I make it 70 here, and the action folds back to our mate who throws in the call. So it heads up to a flop of 8-6-6 rainbow with 1 club. When the villain checks it over to me, I definitely want to stab on this board with a hand this week. My opponent has a bunch of natural folds with their ace x and king high stuff, and even if they call with them now, they're going to be hard pressed to call across multiple barrels. So I start things off with a stab here. I go ahead and make it 50 bangers, then the villain throws in the call. So we're still heads up to a turn, which is a really interesting one. It's the ace of clubs. The villain checks it over to me here, and we do pick up a club draw, which is great, but now I think my opponent's range gets a little bit stronger. They do have a bunch of ace x hands, which we are not going to be able to fold out at this point, but I do want to continue stabbing just because if my opponent did cold call pre-flop with a pocket pair, this is going to be a really bad turn for them, and we definitely want to realize fold equity from those hands if we can, but do not want to use a large size just in case my opponent has a strong ace or maybe even a 6. So I ultimately decide to make it 100 here, and then the villain doesn't think long at all. call before throwing in the call. So that's bad news. We are definitely in bad shape here. And so really hoping we get there with a club on the river. And then the river is the 10 of diamonds. That is definitely not a club. When the villain checks it over to me, it absolutely sucks to just give up on the river with queen high. But I think my opponent's range is way too strong at this point. They probably have an ace or a 6, and I don't think they're folding either to an all-in. So I just check it back, and then the villain shows us 5, 6 of hearts. So wow, we were in awful shape, and thank God I gave up on the river. Next hand, we're under the gun and we peel 69. As much as I like a dinner for 2, this is a trash hand. I end up folding it, and at this point, my camera actually falls over on my chip stack, and I realize, you know what? That's probably a sign from the poker gods. I think my session's done from today. I'm pretty tired after recording every single hand. My stuff is falling all over the place, so this is when I decided to rack up and leave the game. So there you go, that was literally every single hand I played over this 5.5 hour session. Largely, I'm very happy with the quality of my decisions. I think maybe going in with the knowledge that you guys were going to see every single hand I played allowed me to focus in and make some more disciplined decisions than sometimes I do if I'm not on my A grade. So, going to give myself the A grade for today's session, was rewarded for a strong performance, ended up winning $775 after I tipped the cashier the $1 change across the 5.5 hours, which is an hourly rate. I'm definitely not going to complain about it 2-5. If you enjoyed this video and you want to watch more 2-5 poker vlogs, there's a video up on your screen now. Click that and watch an insane 2-5 session. For now though, I'm out of here. GG Gamble Gang.